I'm Erin Salve, the publications manager for TCG Books. Just here to say hi, welcome, helping to run the Zoom today. And please let me know if you have any questions, but I've also got my screen shared up here, and hopefully we won't have the chat popping up there too much, but we'll all do our best. So I'm going to pass this over to Sage now. Thanks.
Welcome, everyone. So happy you're joining us for this MegaLAB hackathon, figuring out what are we doing in this time, in this age, in this moment, about all the things that are weighing on us. We appreciate you all taking the time. We're doing both a virtual and a terrestrial space, so we're going to be moving back and forth between. So I'm encouraging folks to speak up, be on camera when they can, and also use the features that we have to communicate, like chat and such. For our session today, we have 3 facilitators. Hi, myself, my name is Sage Crump. My pronouns are she and her. In the room in Pittsburgh, we have Lisa Mount. Where are you, Lisa? Can we get a chance
right
to
here.
see?
Hey, everybody.
Okay, you saw Lisa. Just those of us online, we just saw Lisa walk by, and then we have Mayan Teo. There you are, Mayan. Oh, we see both of you right in front of there, and so we'll be moving back and forth throughout the agenda and sharing space together. And so we'll be capturing some things digitally, but we'll also be capturing some things in the terrestrial world in real time in the room. And then we'll mash it all together and share it all back out at a later date. Our agenda today is really an opportunity for us to begin to build towards practices, some ways that we can begin to address some of the pain points that folks have identified within the field. Some of the moments that are causing particular pressure, that are keeping us up at night. We designed this thinking about a hackathon, right? Like thinking about it in that way. So we'll do conversations, you'll be in small groups, and we're asking you to really think about the work we're doing today from your positionality in the field, right? It's really easy to think about what could happen outside of, but we really want to center the agency and the power, the dignity and humanity of everyone in this room, no matter where they are, inside an organization or just inside the field, even if you're not inside an institution. So we're going to ask you to kind of come with this face forward, with yourself forward, as we move through the day. And I'm going to pass it to Mayan.
Hi, everyone. Folks, you're also welcome to head over there in case you want to see the screen more. And we're also welcoming people to sit not with their colleagues, so you have more fresh perspectives today. I'm going to take care of some real quick meeting agreements. We're going to sort of see if we can get consensus around that. We're going to take care of your own needs, do what you need, take care of your bodies. Permission to speak in rough draft, bring a spirit of generosity, and be willing to be accountable. Can we sort of like raise our hands if we're willing to consent to that? And if you're not, like, speak now or forever hold your peace. It will not be accountable. Oh. Okay, good. We're there. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Before we move on, I just want to say for our folks online, I'm dropping a link into the chat. And so what Mayan just went through pretty quickly, you'll see in this Google slide deck so that you have reference to it as well. So so you can agree to all of the wonderful community agreements that were just shared.
Cool. Thank you, Sage. Thank you, Mayan. Thank you, all of you, for showing up at 9:30 in the morning on the first day of a conference that hasn't actually, well, has sort of officially started in the virtual world and now is officially starting in what Sage has taught me to say is the terrestrial world. Love that. Good morning, everybody. I'm Lisa Mount. I use she and her pronouns. I'm often misgendered as sir, and I completely love it. So you should feel free to say yes, sir, if you want to, or no, sir, and I'll take both of those. TCG is going to do a formal and extended land acknowledgement when we join the full plenary. Sage has a brilliant land acknowledgement for the virtual space, and we're going to try to make a practice of turning to the digital space first in most of our conversations and then coming back to the terrestrial room, lest we leave them behind. Sage, do you want to offer the digital space land acknowledgement?
Absolutely.
Thanks, Boo.
As we gather in this virtual space, we recognize that we are connected with one another through the winds that blow air into our lungs, through the waters that move deep into the earth and up to the sky. We acknowledge that the ground beneath our feet is historically home of indigenous peoples, many of whom have been forced to leave for other lands. We share now the names of the people who were the first to live, celebrate, lament, and sing upon the land where we now sit. For those of you in Pittsburgh, Lisa has a list of those. And for those of you online, I'm going to encourage you to drop into the chat the names of the folks whose land you are sitting upon. I am in New Orleans, Louisiana, also known as Bilbancha, the historic and current home of the Choctaw, Homa, Chitimacha, and names that have been forgotten to colonization.
Great. Here in Pittsburgh, of course. Wow. Hey, Scott, we're hearing sound out of this little guy, and I don't know how to stop it because I'm Mac only, not PC. Mac only since 1977.
Echo.
Before they were Macs and they were just apples. So we are here on the land of the Osage people, of the Susquehanna, of the Shawnee. And a land acknowledgement is an opportunity for a conversation and an invitation to question whose land we are on, who has stewarded this land for thousands of years, and where are we at this point in history, in the tiny blip of time that we occupy in the spectrum of the 20,000 years of human habitation of this place. So I invite you to think about where you live, where you've come to, and in what way can we do honor to the ancestors? In what way can we be good ancestors for those who will come after us in doing this work? Cool. Framing. I think that's where we're at.
We are.
And I get to start that, don't I?
Yes, you do.
Wow, as you can see, we are working this on the fly with an improv outline script solamente. So in this session, which has been titled the MegaLAB on theater's labor, justice, and workforce crisis, we're going to basically frame this in 3 questions. What's going on? And we're going to capture a little in the room data on that. And then have you have a conversation at the tables. That's why we've asked you to mix it up, and please not sit with your immediate colleagues. We're going to dig a little deeper into what's going on and ask why it's going on. What are the core issues underneath the current pain points that pretty much, if you're here, we're assuming you're feeling. And then we're going to ask, what next? What are the experiments that you're in the midst of right now that might be useful to your colleagues in the field to understand? What are you trying? And I'm going to ask Mayanne to expand on that a little bit, because she's got some brilliant thinking on it.
Yeah, you know, as an artist myself, I often think like, what am I going to do next? And I often start with like the question I do not have an answer for. That is where I actually begin. And there are a lot of incredibly brilliant people in this room who have a lot of answers. I wonder if we start today with the place where you do not know, knowing that you can rely on the rest of the room here to possibly have iterations towards that, or possibly have a word of thought that might lead you yourself to that greater wisdom that we're hoping all to sort of unearth today. So let us begin with, what do we not know? Yeah.
Right. And Sage is going to invite us. There you go.
There we go.
So Sage.
And we're not going to leave you in sort of limbo to just figure out like what you don't know. We're going to offer some ways to begin to direct our thinking, right? And we're going to use this concept, this theoretical work called emergent strategy. Some of you may have heard about it. Some of you may have read the book. It's gone around the field for a couple of years. And we're looking at emergent strategy because at its core, it says that change is constant. And so it is, how do we be with change? And what we know is part of what is causing pain, part of what is our pressure in this moment is both the very real and manufactured sense of urgency by racialized capitalism and our very need to keep our institutions alive, to support our staff members, to be able to be a functioning field that continues to share cultural work with the field. So we're going to ask while we go through today to marry your question, like what don't I know and what can I learn by shaping practices through the lens of emergent strategy.
Awesomeness. All right, so we're launching into the what part of this, and this will involve some technology. It's pretty low and light tech, but if you've got a smartphone or a device and you can open a browser, for those of you who are close to the screen, we're going to ask Sage to put up a QR code on the screen that you can just snap a picture of. For those of you who are far from the screen, if you would go to menti.com on any old browser, like I said, it's pretty low bandwidth. menti.com, menti.com. And there's a number that we want you to enter. When you get to menti.com, it is 1795 6225.
And for our folks virtually, you also have the QR code probably pretty large in front of you. You can hold your smartphone up to it. But I've also dropped into the chat if you want to go ahead and go directly to it. You can use the code as well.
Sure, I will. The code number is 1795 6225. And we've got two questions in this Mentimeter space, right? And these are, Sage, if you can show the Mentimeter, I think you're running it. Yeah, 1795 6225. Sage, can you share screen? You are muted, boo. There it is. And if there's any way to make that larger, that would be super awesome. So what we're trying to do here is measure where the pressure points are. And this gives you 4 things. That's beautiful. To vote on of what's causing you pain or where your pressure points are. Top one is morale and burnout, competitive compensation and pay equity, limited experience, having trouble finding qualified job applicants, and grappling at your institution with deficit budgets. Perhaps you're getting pushback from your board about passing that. Perhaps the pushback is internal. We're just trying to get some data to work with. Okay, so what we're seeing so far, I'm looking for the number down at the bottom. Oh yeah, we're getting 93 votes on that. That's robust data, as they say. So it looks like that burnout is leading the pack for pain points, with more people saying it than not. Competitive compensation is coming in second on that. Limited experience, qualified job applicants. If you look at if you can see the screen, you can see the little waveform behind it, right? What that's telling you is that some folks are saying, actually, no, that's not causing us pain, all the way up, right? So those waveforms represent the votes that people are putting in. And then deficit budgets causing some serious pain, but not for everybody. All right, we have one more of these slides so that we can capture some data. Stay where you are in the Menti. Sage is going to advance the slide. And here's one more to vote on. I promise Sage is going to advance the slide.
Sage is going to advance the slide as soon as Sage understands how to do that.
Yep.
Oh, here we
Click on
go.
the second
All right.
slide. There it is.
And
Yep.
here's the second slide.
Yep.
Here we go.
There we go. Okay, so now you should be able to vote. Same code. A new poll should have popped up on your page. Are you able to vote on this one?
There we go.
There it is. Excellent. We are now past the 90-person mark on this data. So it's interesting to compare the two. These pain points or pressure points are not quite as acute as the last page that we were working with. People leaving the field, you can see the responses are pretty strong across all 5 points of pain. Unions, a little less, coming in at 2.9 on a 1 to 5 scale. Production practices, there's a rat in the belly of the snake there. So it's a middling sort of pain point for a lot of folks. Isn't that a pretty image? And this last one, Mayanne and I were having a conversation about what it means, right? The sense of onboarding artists and practices for welcoming artists into your existing culture or making your existing culture clear at all to people who are coming into your organizations. This presumes that you know your organizational culture, and that may or may not be true. Great, 119 votes. So just to gather some quick data and to capture what we're learning, highest pain point on here is morale and burnout. I see some nodding that resonates with y'all. Second highest is this question of pay equity and how do we get to it, all right? And then the rest all are in sort of roughly the same zone. And I just realized that we changed the scale on you in the voting. Thank you for your grace on that. The first one is a 10-point scale and the second one is a 5-point scale, but we figure you all can do the math. So, thank you for that. Okay, that's pretty fascinating. We'll capture this and it'll go into the graphic recording that I'm about to start doing. So now at your tables, in groups of 3 or 4, right? So split your tables in half. We want to give you an opportunity to ask yourselves 2 key questions, right? How do these results show up in your work, right? How are you seeing this manifest? That's question 1. And question 2, so that's the what. And question 2 is the why. We want you to spend a minute talking with your peers and your colleagues here in the field to think about what policies and practices in your workplace are enabling these results that you've just seen aggregated and are enabling the pain that you are feeling. Does that make sense? Those 2 questions?
Yeah.
Where are we at?
Wonderful. And for our friends in virtual space, I've just dropped the same into the chat, and we'll send you into breakout rooms for the same amount of time. So you'll see that coming up. So feel free to join.
So we're gonna ask you to be in these conversations for about 15 minutes, which in facilitator time is an eternity, and in conversation time is no time at all. All right. So it's going to get loud and fun in here. The folks on the Zoom are going into some breakout spaces, but we're going to take about 15. One of us, Mayanne or me, we will let you know when we're about halfway so that we make sure that you're digging into the why. Please practice conversation justice and make sure everybody has an opportunity to speak before you start diving in on the conversation. All right.
So whenever someone says something, we go, yeah, or whatever. And if you're like, I don't have that problem, have a nice life. And then they'll share the why. And then with the why, if you're like, ooh, how to respond. So I really encourage us to like vocally respond because we're so conditioned right now to be in our little rooms. So do whatever you want to do to like vocally respond. Okay, Sage, I'm going to throw it to you to have a stack of folks, and I'm going to throw it to you to call on someone to share one of the pressure points and the why.
Absolutely. So thank you, man. We missed a little bit of the beginning of what you said. So I want to catch my folk online just up. So we're going to we're asking people to share a little bit about the conversation that you were just having, right? Like what did resonate for you and what practices actually do you think enable what showed up in terms of what is a pressure point? So we're looking for one or two people. It would be great. I'm looking at some of my folks online whose cameras are up, or folks, just one or two of us. Did you hear something when talking with your colleague that was inspiring, surprising, commiserating, any of the above?
Well, I'll dive right in. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jasmine Bonner. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm the program manager at Stage Source. In my group, room nine, something that sort of came up is we talked about sort of the interconnectedness of some of these pain points, right? That if one is missing, they're all sort of about addressing our basic human needs for stability, security, food, housing, all of those things, right? Connection. And when one of them is deficient, then all of a sudden it sort of becomes this waterfall effect that sort of perpetuates pain points throughout the system. And how in some ways, if we sort of all worked at sort of unilaterally and uniformly sort of addressing these issues, then somehow I'm imagining they would all sort of begin to sort of satisfy themselves or fix themselves. Now, I know that's sort of like a very simple way of putting it, but it's sort of like when we think about issues of equity, instead of saying me first and then you, like when we all move together, then we get much farther and we create a more stronger front. So I think that method and that system could work in addressing some of these pain points moving forward.
Oh, thank you. The interconnectedness, right? People, like, yes. I'd like to flow stage actually, like y'all do one, we'll do one. Okay, so I'm going to take something from the room and then we'll come back to you in the virtual. Anybody in the room here? Anybody in the terrestrial space want to speak too? Yes, speak.
Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine Baena Benitez. My pronouns are they, them, ella. Something that my group and I ended up talking about, Ricky y Maria, was in regard to how everything is interconnected. The body remembers, right? Mm-hmm. The body knows. There's a lot of trauma that we carry, unfortunately, because of this. For me, the way pain has shown up is burnout, right? Talking about how sometimes we are the only one in these spaces and how difficult that could be navigating, although it is not maybe intentional, right? To be like, you're the only one of your identity in this space, you carry a lot. Right? I carry a lot. As a first generation gay Indigenous person, there's a lot that I carry in these bones. This is my instrument, right? And something that is affecting it is potentially the lack of diversity. Yeah. Yes, exactly, right? And for me, I'm like, wow, sometimes I go into spaces and I forget that I'm the only one. Right? Or I go into spaces and I remember I am the only one. And I'm like, my goodness, this is a lot for me to carry sometimes. And what's been helping me is remembering that there's a way that I can potentially try to navigate community, and that community will help restore that sort of imbalance that I feel at times. But I just want to put it out there that everything is interconnected, that our bodies carry a lot, and that the body remembers. Right. But hopefully through all of these conversations we are having, and there was a lot of responses, I believe 116 you mentioned, we all know that. Maybe it has shown up differently for all of us, but we know, so thank you all for sharing space and for being so open and willing to hold space for these conversations so that we can start, making entry into these barriers.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Let's
Yeah,
take it to the bodies in the virtual.
Yeah, that's so exciting. Thank you for sharing. I'm excited to see what kind of practices come up around that as we move through our time together. Someone else in the space, what conversations were you having in your group, in your small group, that was surprising to you, was exciting to you, or what did you hear that resonated, that you're like, ugh, I appreciate the person talking about, being alone. And so here, am I pronouncing it Che?
Chie.
Chie, come on in.
Thanks, Sage. Hi, everyone. My name is Chie Morita. I use she, her pronouns, currently in what is colonially known as Cave Creek, Arizona, the Yavapai Apache Upper Pima territories. I'm the co-founder of Forge NYC. We handle consulting, so we talk to a lot of people. So the thing that really resonated in our room, in our space, is that we were all sort of experiencing the same pain points, which is always lovely to be in a room where we're like, okay, yes, great, not alone, excellent. And the thing that we sort of landed on first is the clunky and mechanical sort of nature of these large organizations, whether they be the large funding organizations that we're speaking to, asking to fund the work, or the nonprofit industrial complex as a whole, and that perhaps the core thing that is the why for all of this pain is an undervaluing in general of the work, the time, the art, the structures that we are building, whether that's by our government, whether that is by our audiences, whether that's by whoever that's by. There is an undervaluing of this work, and I think that starts with ourselves, within ourselves. I was certainly taught in college that art was undervalued, and I think it started there, and that is sort of where we started digging into the why of like, where can we start to pick at the how we teach the value of ourselves, the value of our bodies, the value of our work, the value of our time, and how can we like cut that off at the pass a little earlier, so that we're not teaching these bad habits. Because while we are heartened that there's a lot of organizing and conversation going on, perhaps if we can teach it a little less, then we won't have to correct as much long term, and this pain isn't something that we have to pass on to our inheritors as well.
Yes. Oh, capitalism and its ugly head all the time. Someone in the room? Hi there, go ahead, in the beautiful rainbow stripes.
Hi, I'm Laura Michelle Hoadley. My pronouns are she, her. And something that we didn't specifically talk about, but that I think that was like kind of the undercurrent of the interconnectedness is also that the people in this room and the people who make art have a lot of empathy. And that becomes a vulnerability, and it plays into all of these pain points, but it also seems to move into accommodation. And that was something that we didn't use the word accommodation when we were talking, but that we were talking a lot about, is that we make up the difference. And it's something that becomes exhausting after a while when you are conditioned to accommodate. And I think that that's very connected to the undervaluing as well, is because when what you do is already undervalued, you feel more pressure to accommodate for the value that you feel for it, and make it happen because you don't expect other people to help you make it happen anymore, because you start to feel the undervalue.
Yes, indeed. I feel like our bodies are like constantly experiencing the accommodation. Ooh, Sage.
We've got hand claps in the digital space for that we're really appreciating what the person just shared, Okay, we're looking for one more person from their group that had something that you're like, oh, I want to offer this to the body. Okay, Monica, welcome.
Hi, my name is Monica Risi. I'm Peruvian. I lived 12 years in New York, then I lived 8 years in Peru, and now I'm back in Massachusetts I've been here for 4 months. Burnout is real. We were talking about this in the group. A colleague of mine Sharia, began an African-American theater company in a city of Pennsylvania that you have to forgive me for not remembering because I'm not American, but that she explained as being a very white city. And when she spoke about burnout, from that situation, I explained to her that as a Peruvian who had lived for a bunch of years in New York and worked in New York, going back to my home country with the expectation and the excitement of being able to share some of the things that had been systematized and shared with me in the States, I now experience severe burnout because of what has also been explained in this group because of being alone, right? Because of trying to share things that are very clear to you and that you think at the beginning are not clear to other people, and you make the effort to try to make it clear to other people, and eventually you just learn, oh, they're really not interested, right? They don't see the value in this. They don't see the value in bringing this variable in to the equation. But I just wanted to share that as a professor who's been for the last 4 years, including during a pandemic, being like the support person for a bunch of new young artists at the college level, I think that every time that they come to me feeling that they're burnt out, feeling like they're demoralized, I feel like them having me helps them continue making art. And I remember that when I first started as a professor in Lima, I called Nello McDaniel, who I know is somebody that a lot of you have worked with from Arts Action Research. And Nello, as usual, was very graceful and helped me, as we say, tropicalize some concepts so that students in Latin America could embrace some new concepts and go forward. And it helped me a lot to have Nello as a support person. So having each other as a support, I think that if other people don't value things or other people don't understand things, it's always taxing. But I think that if we have each other to talk to look at, to have like a monthly coffee with, I think it really helps the team. It also helps the arts for us to not like lose faith in the stuff that we're doing. I think the problem has been that the pandemic has had us isolated for a really long time. And that's why also the variable of burnout is so high right
now. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Community is such a beautiful thing. One more from the room. Yes, go ahead.
Hey y'all, my name is Jay Woods. My pronouns are she, her. Based in Seattle, Washington, originally from New York. I'm the Associate Artistic Director of the Fifth Avenue Theater.
Yeah.
Thank you. And something, it's budget approval season. So I just watched everybody's shoulders do this. So one thing that's interesting when we talk about that pressure point about a deficit budget is a lot of board members, probably for y'all, are going, well, COVID's done, so we don't need all those understudies and we don't need all of those swings and we don't need all of this. And it's like, well, now wait a minute. First of all, y'all aren't here to say, I'd like to see Annie 1,000 times. So here's my check. Because actually, it's a service organization. And we actually have a mission, okay, a service organization. And we have a mission to service our community, which contains our artists across discipline. And so when we say that we're in service, how do we tend to a budget that pertains to our mission? Now, a moral budget as a document, being a moral document is not new for most of us in this room. We've been talking about that for a while. We've been trying to talk to our boards about that. At least I can speak for myself. So in this last meeting when we're trying to pass this board, it was really important for me to say, hey, y'all, I'm new. I just started March 1st, but y'all are going to get a piece of me. And I have to preface everything and say, hey, I just want to let y'all know, I don't speak Pacific Northwest. I speak East Coast. Okay. And so when we want to talk about the why for some of those things, I've really been trying to push the Fifth Avenue Theater to, and in a really great way, Bill Berry is the artistic director, a really, really wonderful artist who is trying to get the theater to be back on mission. Fifth Avenue Theater does a lot of touring productions and does things from scratch. So they kind of have 1 foot in commercial producing and then 1 foot in nonprofit, but it is a 501c3, meaning it is committed to service. And so how do we actually galvanize the staff, tether them back to mission to remind ourselves that it actually is a commitment to service and therefore a commitment to each other and thusly a commitment to art. So how do we remind, reorganize, and tether ourselves back to the mission? So that's what we were talking about over here. Thanks so much.
Yes. Amazing. I think we are actually doing so well. We can take one more from the room. Yes, go ahead.
Hang on, Jack, hang on. We need you on the mic so that the people on the Zoom can hear you. This is
Got it.
auditory justice.
Is this
going on.
okay?
That's much better. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Jack. My pronouns are he, him. I'm in New York. I'm at SUNY Purchase's conservatory. And something that I think resonated with the folks at this table is the idea that producing institutions produce beyond our means as a matter of course. It's the water we swim in, and we subsidize our production activities through by underpaying labor, right? And that is no secret to anyone in this room, but it is largely invisible to our audiences, our funders, and often our boards. And so is there a project, a very complicated, challenging, and delicate project of re-educating funders and boards in particular to understand what a dollar means? Because we have taught them through our ingenuity and through our commitment to expect too much. And so how can we explain to them that for every grant, for every donation, for every ticket, we are essentially matching that income through with unpaid labor. This is, no one wants to do this because we value the achievements of our institutions. We want to produce exceptionally. And it is, I mean, it is anathema to me to even think about talking about scaling back and helping my stakeholders understand that scaling back means to produce more ethically. That's all.
Yes, the real. So I learned this through like video production days 20 years ago. What a producer said to me, fast, cheap, good, choose two. Fast, cheap, good, choose two. Fast and cheap, it's not good. Cheap and good is not fast. Fast and good is not cheap. When you have all three, it's exploitation. Just remember that when you're like fast, cheap, good. Okay. I'm going to turn it to Sage, who's going to introduce some emergent strategy principles for us to figure out how we can make experimentations towards iteration for how to address these things. Sage?
Wonderful. Thank you, Mayanne. And thank you everyone who shared. It was really rich. Appreciating that last framing around like how we think about exploitation and the systems that are at play as we move through this, because we're not just about individuals, we're also inside a hegemony and a cultural construct that is creating pressure, adding pressure, creating points of pain. And so one of the things that we wanted to share as we develop from these spaces, as we begin to develop our hypotheses on what we can do from our places of positionality, is give a little bit of framing. And I appreciate people who are talking about feeling alone or being in conversation. One of the things that I think is really helpful, and was talking with another theater maker friend, is like, what is your lineage? Are you clear about who you are doing the work with? We pretend that theory sort of is in your head, but it also is, who are you standing with and who are you standing next to? So I know I'm in a really deep conversation with bell hooks all the time, even before she became an ancestor, right? Through reading and fronting and running and kind of the wrestling of it all. So I'm going to encourage you to think about emergent strategy in a similar way. How to be in conversation with what I'm about to share. Some folks, if you are familiar with this in some way, just sort of wave a hand. I'm looking around, put your hand up in the digital space. Alrighty, so I am going to move through a good bit of content relatively quickly. And what I'm going to ask you to do is not necessarily take notes. Y'all can buy the book. You don't need all of that, all right? What I'm going to ask you to do is just sit with what I'm saying. And if there is something that feels resonant for you, that you're like, oh, I want to build my hypothesis around this. And you'll know it in your body because you'll feel scared. You might feel it in your gut. You might feel really excited, like your blood will start pumping, your heart will start rushing. So look for that sort of reaction to the words that I'm saying. And those are the words that I want you to keep as you move into your next group of actually kind of landing a hypothesis and a theory for yourself. So in emergent strategy, we have principles and elements. The elements are sort of the conceptual, the overview of how we think about how this turns towards the world. And then the principle is an action. We follow the work, a lot of it's developed through the study of Octavia Butler. And one of the things that she reminds us in our book that we hold is everything you touch, you change. Everything you change changes you. So if you hold that, thinking about everything you touch, you change. So how you shift changes the large. So fractals are the relationship between the small and the large. What are the small conversations that we have? My ability to talk to coworkers that also mirrors the way we can talk to each other in the field. Someone mentioned funders, from our organization to funders, that the practices of those conversations should mirror each other. And if they're not, that could be a place for action and hypothesis. Small is good, small is all. These are large things. So what are the intimate, smaller actions that can be taken that really just begin to relieve enough pressure that folks have a larger view? Intentional adaptation. We are constantly changing. Part of what is happening right now is we are running up against our sense of the largeness of our field or our institutions, that we are looking to be, we aren't as nimble as we hope to be. And so when we're thrashing around and when we are in the midst of flux, trying to figure out where to go next, what is your intentional adaptation, is really important, right? What should we be thinking about that we're turning towards? And the principle of that is like, be constant. Change is constant. So how can you be like water? We say freeze bullshit, right? Like name it, don't let it go, don't let it pass by. It'll just keep floating by, right? Name it so that when you're in the room, when you're with folks, you are actually having a collective analysis, right? Interdependence and decentralization. This room that we are in right now, both in the room in Pittsburgh and online, is made up of folks in the field in a lot of different ways. And we need each other. We need each other to be healthy. We need each other to be whole. We need to hear from each other and we need to interact with each other. And so part of what I feel like is analogous to what Mayanne shared is we believe there is always enough time for the right work, and also someone else, that the slowing down is a really important practice so that we can be aligned in clarity, so that folks have the ability to harness the importance of wherever they are in their positionality in an institution. Trust the people, they become trustworthy, or necessary boundaries become clear, right? And so I will say, if you pick up the book, that or necessary boundaries become clear is not in the book, but it is something that we've added in the last 5 years. Because you want to be clear about like who's doing what. Emergent strategy is not about simply the throwing away of hierarchies. It's about clarity and understanding so everyone can live in the power of wherever they are, and that collectively we are moving and turning towards that which feels like health. Non-linear and iterative, change comes in shifts. Not only are we used to producing at a rapid pace, but that also tends to lend itself towards how we think about change, right? Like how fast, how hard, how when our levels of frustration, when things feel like they're not changing. So we're asking to think about the cumulative change, right? Like what's happening? It might not be the furthest that we're trying to get to in the moment, but can we name that something is happening? And that goes with our principle, never failure, always a lesson. So we're always trying to learn towards that which we believe gives life, right? So it's not that something didn't happen, something happened. The question is, can you mine that something for your next intentional adaptation? Transformative justice and resilience. We talk about resilience in a way that abolitionist Ruth Wilson Gilmore talks about resilience, which is turning towards that which is life affirming. So it's not just the ability to withstand the pain or the, I can survive what's happening, but it is about, okay, what would actually feel most like life in this moment? What would actually give more energy? What would create more space? And transformative justice feels very connected to our very simple community agreements this morning, which is willingness to be held accountable, generosity, and we're engaging. And if so, we move at the speed of trust, right? You can't drag someone along, and trust is something that actually has to be offered. No one can make you trust them. No one can decide. So if we think about practicing new ways in which we see each other differently, that we're deconstructing power hierarchies that make folks feel uncomfortable or unseen or devalued, or actually not just makes folks feel that way, but that is it, then the ability to offer trust to each other, the ability to step out becomes really important. And I love that trust is slow until it is fast, right? Creating more possibilities. In healthy ecosystems, there are many ways to grow. And so thinking about, in your experiments, what can I do? What can I try that actually makes more room? That actually doesn't just solve a problem, but actually helps us be more expansive. Think about where we need to grow, right? Some principles we use is less prep, more presence, which isn't no prep, right? Like I say, prep to your level of comfort and level of comfort for folks, but also be able to hear each other in the space, be able to connect and not so tightly running towards an end goal, right? But being present with each other actually can offer us a wider view of what's possible. Again, what you pay attention to grows. And so these are the elements and principles of emergent strategy. And we're gonna take a moment. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and take a moment, about 3 to 5 minutes, for you to individually sit with all of what I just heard. Hopefully what I asked is that you found a moment where you're like, ooh, I don't know about that. Any of those, right? And just begin to jot down for yourself. What was the element or what was the principle? And practice that did that for you. Because in a few minutes, we're gonna go back into your small groups, and collectively, you're going to support each other in developing an experiment for you in the direction of whatever was giving you life. Make sense? Y'all, I can see you in the room. I don't know if you know this, but I see you. Okay. Make sense? Does it make sense, folks? All right, thank you. All right.
Sage, I'm gonna help with some timing. I'm gonna put the timer on for 3 minutes and check in then. All right,
Beautiful.
go ahead.
Thank you.
I wonder if we can put the slide back up for reference. There's also, Elise is writing it up here as well. Yes.
I've had a request to repeat the question. Which element and principle are you interested in building an experiment around?
And Sage, take us through to the next one. We're arriving at the experiment.
Wonderful. Welcome. All right. So you've laid out all your ingredients. Time to put the sandwich together. This is what we're going to do for the next. So you're going to go back into small groups. And here's the prompt, right? If this insert practice, right? What you talked about in your first small group, what we shared, is the thing that will relieve the pressure or soothe the pain, right? So folks who were talking about clarifying budgets with folks or this pace of work, feeling alone, if those is the thing that will relieve the pressure and soothe the pain, then I can affect this from my positionality by doing something, right? And we offer an emergent strategy by doing something that is rooted in decentralization, iteration, iterative thinking, how to be with change, right? So you can use this specific question as a prompt, right? If this, whatever practice that you're like, this is the rub right here, is the thing, if addressing this will relieve pressure and soothe the pain that we've talked about in the beginning, I can affect this from my positionality by doing X, Y, and Z. Pretty simple, right? That's what we're going to get into. It sounds really lovely, right? It sounds really, really clean. And what we'll say is release from any absolutes, right? From like being sure. Begin to get yourself in the habit of thinking about experiments, of iteration, of learning, right? That's the muscle we're building in this moment. So in this room, we're going to break out in groups of 3. And in your space, I think y'all are still turning towards, Lisa and Mayan, y'all are turning towards the folks at your table. And you'll have another 10
Actually,
minutes.
I think we are so on time with this. I've never seen the like. You know, theater people, we work in a time-based art form, and all the recovering stage managers or practicing stage managers in the room, thank you for keeping us in that Western European notion of time with which we have defined this space. But let's put 15 minutes on the clock and we'll judge by the buzz if we need to give it an extra 5 and then hear back from y'all. And just to say it, the graphic recording is the property of this space. You are welcome to take photographs at any time.
Wonderful.
So we're gonna do 15. I'm gonna let you know when it's 5 minutes left. All right, go ahead. We're back, everybody.
Okay, there we go.
Oh,
Hope you didn't have your headphones in too close for that.
it's so good to be in space, isn't it? Just take a quick minute, rub your hands. Ooh, all of the beautiful things that were shared. Getting ready to roll our sleeves up. Ooh, you can do a little quick body sweep if you choose. Ooh, I love this. Oh yeah. Oh, ooh. You choose. All right. We're gonna start with Sage. We're gonna flow a little bit back and forth to harvest out all of the incredible ideas that have come forth and in your iterations. Sage, go ahead.
Absolutely. So, my friends online, let's think about it. Like, this is like the best part. This is the most exciting part, right? Like, okay, we've done all this sort of grasping. Now, what are we going to eat, right? This is how I think about it. What are we going to eat? We've been cooking. What are we going to eat? If this practice is the thing that will relieve the pressure, soothe the pain, I can affect this from my position by doing ... Who's got something good to get us started with? Come on in, Rachel.
Hi, everyone. I am Rachel D'Amboise. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the production manager at City Theater here in Pittsburgh, so the land acknowledgement at the top of today applies to me. In the spirit of speaking in draft, one of the things we talked about in my group is the idea of embracing strategic failure. In the sense that, you know, you arrive at a moment and there's a fork in the road and you need to make a decision. And on the one hand, you can reach your goal, the show can go on as planned, but it is at the cost of the people involved. There will be some kind of damage to them if you move forward, or they'll have to overstretch or overwork or something to make it happen. And the other fork is that you don't reach that goal as planned. And when should we, and are there positive outcomes to embracing that strategic failure and choosing not to reach the goal? I guess this is a fancy way of pushing back against the idea of the show must go on, which is not a new idea. I think we all know that that's an unhealthy practice, but is it helpful to do that intentionally?
Oh, I love that.
Yes. How do you do that?
So
Helpful
good.
to do that intentionally. Show must go on. You know, it feels like that is so deeply in our practice. Like, how can we practice against it? You know, like that's actually like a major shift that is necessary. Who else? And folks on the other side who can't see me, I'm going to come to you later on. So just changing the position here. Go ahead. Let's take a question. Share out here.
Hey, my name is Chris Gibson. I use he, him pronouns. And one of the things that we were talking about at our table was acknowledging the sort of seismic shifts that we've all gone through, both as organizations, as audience members with the pandemic, with George Floyd, and how our mission before these events happen maybe doesn't necessarily jive up with what's happening now and where our values have changed. And talking about making intentional change to the mission. If our values have shifted, does our mission need to shift? But how do we get there through intentional change? It takes time to change labor practices. We acknowledge that they're happening. They need to be changed right now, but to be able to change them immediately is disingenuous. It takes aggressive or assertive planning. And being realistic about how, or maybe not just realistic, but being aggressive and how do we get to that goal where we want to be, but at the same time acknowledging what are the things that we can do right now in this moment to make positive changes. So that was it. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Back to the virtual space, please.
Absolutely. And we've got Tim coming up. Tim, you want to talk to us about what came up for you? And
yeah, well, I'm gonna comment to the show must go on thought process. So I work at the Shaw Festival in Niagara-on-the-Lake, Ontario, Canada, which is one of the North America's largest producing theater companies. So we come from a certain specific place, but that place is built on the idea that art is and serves basic human needs. And so the idea for us of how we've moved through the last couple of years, and we've kept all of our artists and everybody working throughout the pandemic, has been to focus on how do we serve those basic human needs if we're not serving them through live performance. So there's a real question for me as a charity and as a focal point for that space. It's not about the show must go on, although that is one of the things that we do. But it's about how are those people we serve being served if we're not doing that. And so I just one of your provocations was very interesting about the framework of what the how are we removing harm, etc. And like a soup kitchen or like any other basic human needs charity, the framework of how do we ensure that both our stakeholders are getting served by our needs has to be balanced in with how we ensure that our workers have self-care, right? And so so I really posit that it's important for our organizations to empower our workers to call it when they're hitting their wall, but also to figure out how, when they need to step back, someone can step in behind them, because those people we're serving still have to be served. And so that's the question. It's not if you're coming at this in that, and I think it was Monica who made the lovely comment about it being a service organization. If you're coming at this in that you're serving basic human needs, we can't stop doing that simply in order to make sure, we just have to make sure the resources are there to back up the people who are doing that work, just like they would in any other frontline charitable work.
Thank you, Tim. What a beautiful description of fractals, right? What's happening internally and your work externally. How are these things aligning? What are the values that are guiding both spaces at the same time? Thank you for that. Mayan?
Yeah, values in both spaces at the same time, that balance. Anyone else in this room? I see one right here.
Hi, everybody. My name is Michelle. I'm Cuban, Colombian, Venezuelan, and I am having a little bit of an issue kind of figuring out how can I be the change within my position? So I said in our small group that my pain point was lack of diversity. I'm one out of two people of color on staff. And so for me, the pain point of lack of diversity and how I can help that change that with my job is a little bit difficult because we have an EDIA meeting, but at the end of the Zoom call, it's my life. You know, it doesn't just end when I log off. And I think I need to hold myself accountable to unlearn being quiet. I think as a Latina woman, if I've spoken up, I'm afraid that I'm going to be seen as sassy or have an attitude, ungrateful. And then on top of that, I am young, you know, so, you know, that plays into it as well. So we were kind of discussing how can you be the change when what your pain point is something that you're exhausted with. And I don't want to not be the change, but I am tired. So we were kind of discussing that maybe I can unlearn to be quiet and speak up in those spaces a little bit more about what my needs are, and what I'm feeling, and also request that maybe we can hold a once a month where we just have conversations like these, where it's not so formal, where we're just friends and colleagues, and that we're given the space to kind of express some of these things. So I don't know if that's a solution, but I do know that what I'm going to do with my position is speak up a little bit more, and I need to hold myself accountable with that.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You know, as we were talking about, like, what can I do in my position? We had a conversation that really stuck with me, that it's like, there's the personal shift, like I as a human being and where I can shift. There's my positional shift. There's the institutional shift. And then there's the systemic shift. But it really all begins with that beautiful, like, okay, well, what can I do wherever I am? And what can I do with like me as a person who has had, you know, whose body remembers all of the things. So thank you. Thank you for that courage. Sage?
Absolutely. Yeah, I want to echo the thanks. It really put me in the mindset of that beautiful Audre Lorde quote, right? It is not our differences that separate us. It's our inability to recognize and celebrate those differences, right? So it's like the lack of seeing people. I was with a group yesterday working on gender justice, and there was a trans woman there who was like, oh, actually, I feel comfortable because of the work you all are doing on masculinity, you know? And so like we can find each other even if we don't see someone who looks like us, right? Like, how do we find our people? Who do I have in the virtual space? Who do I have coming up? Who's got a hand? I'm trying to, someone else? Can we get one or two more? We have a really beautiful conversation happening in the chat that I want to offer the room. And I'll start it out. Steven said, maybe the question isn't about if the show goes on, but how does the show go on? And what does going on need to look like? And so we've been in a little chat conversation over here that it's the what and the how that can really be our most spaces of generativity and revolutionary and radical thinking, right? That we have to do it as one thing, that it's important, not have to, but that's important. It's a calling for a lot of us. And also how it happens and what does its shape can actually lead to really inspirational and inspiring thinking. All right, well, I've got Greg coming up. I'm gonna raise your hand, and I'm also gonna ask if there are any people of color in the virtual space who would also like to raise their hand. We'd love to hear from you as well. But Greg, if you'll go ahead next, we appreciate you.
Hey friends, Greg Taubman, he, him pronouns, joining from territory of the Upper Pima, Yavapai, Apache, and Hohokam. I am with Chie, founder of Forge NYC. In our room, we talked about a sort of generational pressure between artists who are founders and came up in the model of sweat equity and self-subsidizing the work, who are facing pressure from the next generation of makers for much more pay equity and working with more of an abundance mindset. And the tricky notion of, are there institutions that can't survive or that will need to move to make room for new institutions and new shapes of institutions to take their place? Or how can those institutions work with the upcoming generations and the inheritors to adapt and change? And the notion of how to situate yourself as a maker of that generation and as someone who is both facing the institutional pressures of the landscape of donors and the pressures of the generation coming up. How can the posture shift, and how can you sort of meet where the inheritors are asking you to take your organization and either change it or let it move?
And was there a practice that you all landed on? Like, this is something that we might try. This is something that we think might impact that.
The practice that I was urging in that space was that we listen to all sides and hopefully work together with the people who are advocating for change in the industry to educate the folks who are funding the industry, so that rather than being positioned between those two forces, you can work in community with the people coming up.
I love that. Let's be an ecosystem, and let's act like an ecosystem that we are, right? Oh, yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Yes, great. Thank you so much. Anyone from this side of the room who wants to speak to practices? Sweeping, coming around. Da, da, da. Oh, there. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Ebony Bell Darcy. I use she, her pronouns. I am the inclusion and engagement director at my organization. So I have, I think, a lot more control over addressing some of these pain points in my position at the organization. And a lot of what our group was talking about was this idea that artists want to be involved in creating the arts. They just don't want to churn out art like machines. And that's what happens when you are burnt out and kind of in this producing and executing model, and it has to get done constantly. So some of the things that we have done, some of the things that I've helped to implement at the organization are about creating these small pockets of conversation where folks can have more of a influence on how and why decisions are being made. Because folks, when they're just out executing stuff and they have no idea, why decisions are being made or how the decision got made, they make assumptions about why things have been made, and it creates a lot of mistrust and it creates a lot of pain. And so some of the things that we've done are create a season selection committee where people come together and talk about the scripts and help our artistic director pick those scripts, so that everybody understands why decisions are being made and why the season was picked this way. We've added a new monthly meeting with our production team to sit with the artistic director and ask questions that they have about the work that is being done, the budgets that are being chosen, all of that stuff. So there is full buy-in and understanding for what they're doing. And so that they feel like folks feel like they have their actually hands on the art that's being created, and their bodies aren't just being used to churn out a product. I think there's a more that can be created to create these kind of little pockets of touch points of helping to make decisions and understanding how decisions are made, so that folks so the burnout is lessened, and people, they can kind of make priorities better. They can say, oh, I sat in this meeting and I know why we made this decision, and I know that this has to get done today, but this isn't that important, right? You can't make those decisions if you have no idea why decisions are being made. Everything feels important in that kind of a situation. So when creating touch points so people understand how decisions are being made, why they're being made, that their voices are actually included in the how and the why, has been very, very helpful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have another chat gem, and then I'm going to bring in one of our friends. This is a chat gem from a discussion that Shellen had with a group. It said, if I would add one to fast, cheap, good list that you can only have two of, big would be the addition. If you have all four, then you're burning yourself out completely. If it's fast, cheap, good, and big. And I know that resonated for me because I like big things. I like big work. And so I appreciate the addition of that to the fast, cheap, good, big, if you're working on all of those at the same time. So that gives an invitation to maybe adjust size in the midst of the fast, cheap, and good. So thanks for that chat, Jim, Shellen. And I'm going to invite Kaiser. Am I pronouncing correctly?
Yes, but you aced it.
Come on.
Hi, Kaiser Ahmed, artistic director, newish artistic director of Jackalope Theater Company in Chicago. And something we've been talking about in our small virtual group that I wanted to offer here to the larger space is counting everything, counting every hour. That yes, we need to slow down at Jackalope. We're slowing down, right? We're producing a little less to try to understand how much it actually costs to make the thing that we need to make. And we've slowed down quite a bit, but not enough. Or the lesson learned for me, I think, is that there is in the act of counting every hour of labor from everyone, there is unprompted labor offered because their people are passionate, and this is the nature of how we've been making things for so long. That we count every single one of those hours, as well as counting every hour that someone is doing something they don't want to do or something they do want to do. It's beginning to paint a picture of what the actual cost is to make a thing. That's all.
No, thank you so much, because you really
Value, yeah.
cost in an
Go ahead,
interesting way in that, cost. What someone doesn't want to do, like, is a cost, right? Like how you think about cost is not just the dollars in our budgets. So thank you for that. Before I pass to you, Mayanne, I just want to again encourage my folks virtually to keep dropping the chat gems. If you have an experiment or something that came up for yourself, please go ahead and drop it into the chat, and we'll make sure that that gets added to the graphic recording.
Yeah.
So.
And so I've been trying to think about what is the live version of the chat where everyone can submit to the cloud in this moment. And so this is an imperfect version, but if you can express the practice in a sentence, a word or phrase, and it's okay. It can also be a part of all the things that you have been able to speak together at more detail and be able to carry forward into the rest of the conference. All of that is also really beautiful. But I would love to sort of, as we close up, to get a plethora of these practices that are coming up for you. And if you just want to sort of raise your hand, say the thing, I'll point to you, and we'll sort of flow out with an abundance of practices. And we'll run and get the mic to you. Yes.
Hi, do you still want us to introduce ourselves, or you want to go really fast?
Really fast.
Okay, so then I would say trust the people and post how much you're paying per job. I work
Yes.
in university, and also if your state is making laws so that you have to pay interns, don't just close your internship program. That is what the solution is for most of you, and it isn't the right solution. So figure out a way to pay interns, and figure out a way to pay interns when they can be there, which might not always be in the school year. So that's what I'm.
Yes.
Really simply, start somewhere.
Start somewhere. Yeah. And folks who haven't spoke too. Yeah.
Set boundaries and change expectations.
Working really well. Okay. Set boundaries and change expectations. Also, you can speak and I will repeat it.
At our table, people were talking about pay the unexpected things, parking, dinner, childcare, pay the things that you can find that might help people with their life.
Yes.
Yeah, I say when you identify these problems or these issues, communicate these to your funders and make them a part of the solution.
Yes, include people. Go ahead, Calvin.
Build restorative time into your season calendar.
Amen. Hallelujah.
All right.
Hey, y'all, Chappelle J again. What I would say is take a look at that spiritual currency versus that monetary currency. And what are you doing to service the spiritual currency of your organization? And so therefore your rehearsal room and your community.
Yes.
Just hold your time boundaries so that you have the time to find what those joys are that you turn towards to build resilience.
In your meetings with institutional funders, share with them a one sheet about your your salary ratios from your highest paid to your lowest paid, and ask them to do the same.
Yes.
If you're not getting compensated appropriately, release yourself from the responsibility of saving your institution and instead reinvest and invest in your relationships with your coworkers and meeting your peers' needs.
Catherine, again, I just want to quickly add that I am a LORT Aspiring Leadership Fellow with the Kennedy Center, and tomorrow we will be hosting a conversation in deeper, relation of how we can move forward. That is titled LORT Aspire Fellows, Unspoken Barriers, Notes on Inclusion. So y'all are invited. But I also wanted to add that before we close, I just wanted to say to remember that we need each other to be bold, that we need each other to move forward.
Let's go.
Yes. Thank you so much. Sage, I'm going to hand it over to you for anything you want to say.
It's just been a pleasure. We've got some great things in the chat about experimenting with the number of hours and expectations and capacity, and trusting people, learning more about how people want to be treated. So we're just excited, and thank y'all for taking this time to begin to build. I'm really excited for the graphic recording coming out of this, so we can begin to weave all the different ways in which we're moving together to create a picture of wellness and wholeness for us all.
Thank you so much. What we're going to do this last moment is we're going to take a couple of 3 breaths together. And I encourage you in these 3 breaths, the swirl of incredible practices, to just sort of sit with one that you're going to say, I'm going to practice this in the next day, in the next week. Choose one and just be able to sit with your body and your breath. Let's breathe 3 times. Thank you so much.
Thank you all digitally and all who showed up here, and have a great day and enjoy the conference.